And welcome back to Strictly Legal on WSN Content Capital. I'm with my host, Mr. Kelvin Siharak, and we are speaking about community, basically tips and residential tips for crime prevention. And of course, before you were giving us an overview of your background, etc. Now, in many communities, there are what you call a lot of community groups, right? A lot of watch groups, etc. And of course, this is designed really to assist in the community looking out for each other as a watchdog to prevent crime. Now, obviously, as a former officer, as well as as your experience, can you just go into detail as to the need or the importance of community type watch groups, and of course, what can they do further to assist in sort of crime prevention?
Well, Ronald, I'm sure that you would agree with me. Presently, we are faced with an upsurge in home invasions in Trinidad and Tobago. Just yesterday evening, I was looking at a video online where it was a lady was driving into her home, opening her remote control gate, and entering into her home. And after she closed the gate, the perpetrator jumped the wall, didn't even enter while the gate was open, jumped the wall, drew for his tool of trade, firearm, and apparently engaged the householder and then exited. And then up to most recently, last night in Tobago, elderly gentleman, there was an intruder at his door knocking, and when he went to answer it, he was shot and killed. So there has been an upsurge, and as you had said earlier, the economic effects as well as the psychological effects is dominating residents at this point in time in our country, and it has far-reaching circumstances in terms of the level of trauma that we have to deal with. May it be we are victims of home invasion or crime, or we are just looking at these videos or reading these articles. I am sure that it will have some sort of traumatical effect on our minds.
But and the thing is, we are so now desensitized to crime. Like, for instance, anytime you see crime news, like I try not to look at it because every day is something. And of course, we become so desensitized that if you see a murder, it's the next murder, right? There's no emotion. People are just going about their daily lives because what can you do again, right? And of course, we've seen all these CCTV images from homes, right, where persons have their property secure. They have automatic gates, they have CCTV cameras. I mean, thankfully, the person in question yesterday had dogs.
Right.
So the dogs rushed the individual, which was a good, obviously that's a good thing, and you can get into detail as to, yes, we have all these things, but is it enough in terms of securing yourself and your property from, let's say, home invasion, etc.?
Most certainly, and I think most communities and persons would have already started the initiative of implementing safety tips and use of the air horns, right? We have seen how effective this can be in certain communities. And however, there are things which we can reinforce to reassure the members of the public that the continuous assessment of your home, the exterior structure, the interior structure, your vehicles, your neighbors, your community, the locality that you live in, we can reinforce these tips so that persons and members of the public are conscious of how it is they provide layers of security to deter and prepare for a home invasion if it is the situation may arise.
So let's start with the protection of your structure, of your exterior, of your structure. Give us some tips as to how can homeowners or persons who are renting or whomever can secure from at least the exterior point of view going up to the interior, etc.
What I believe is that we must look at it from first and foremost, the locality, because some persons may live in rural areas, others may live in urban and suburban areas. Now, in the rural areas, we know that your neighbor might be a mile or a quarter mile away, and it is heavily forested, or depending on the use of the land, may it be agricultural use or the rearing of livestock, there may not be any perimeter fence. So usually the structures might be open. It might consist of a wooden structure, let's say living close to the coastline, or it might be partly wooden or partly concrete or concrete. And this is distinguished as opposed to persons living in urban, suburban areas. We have the townhouses, the duplex, and the residential homes, upstairs and downstairs structures in communities where, in some instances, private residents would have that opportunity to fence their area. So taking a look at the external components of your home and its structure is very important based on the locality where you live. And I say this because if it is you are to do an assessment to put security layers of security measures in place to deter or prepare for a home invasion, I believe that you must first start from the point of view of looking into your home. So stand on your road and just as the intruder or perpetrator would do, look into your home and look at the external components of your home. So if it is you can fence your home, you make sure that your fencing system is properly secured, there are no gaps or the walls are at a certain height and you have the spikes or the barbed wire.
I'm happy you mentioned, just pause a bit, I'm happy you mentioned that your walls at a certain height. But of course, you know, we have town country rules which states that your front wall has to be, I think, 6 feet high and the side is 8 feet high. But then obviously persons are jumping over those walls.
Most certainly.
Right? And of course, how do you now stick within the ambit of the rules and regulations governing construction versus protecting yourself? Because I've seen basically dungeons. People have secured their homes like dungeons for fear to ensure that there's no gaps or heights, right? The height is 12 to 12 feet high and then they have a covering over, right? Because at the end of the day, if probably they are not secured by virtue of the state, they have to do themselves.
Yes, so most certainly that will be subject, obviously, to planning approvals and the draft plans that you would submit to Town and Country and Regional Corporation for approvals. And if it is you are so approved to erect such a large wall, if the case may be. But in preparing your home to deter intruders, it is very important that that security fence, that additional level of protection is there around your perimeter of your home, if it is you can. We know in some instances persons may be living in state homes, for example the AGC homes, and they will require permission to do certain renovations. If it is they were required to construct a fence, or in some instances they may not be able to construct a fence. So now you have to make that adjustments and look at what else you can do to implement that level of safety and security to deter or prepare for a home invasion. Now let's get back to the external aspect of the home. We look at the installation of lights or the motion sensors, lights at night, so that you keep the perimeter of your home well illuminated. It is advisable that you do not keep any objects around the perimeter of your home, especially if it is you are working or your household is a working household and for the majority of the week you are away from your home. You would want to store these things in a safe place so that these objects are not used to break into your home and gain entry. Also, it is advisable, and I'm sure everyone would agree, to invest in that CCTV camera system, alarms and monitoring, motion sensors. That gives you a sense of peace of mind, as well as it puts you in that strategic advantage of being able to see if it is an intruder enters your premises and that motion sensor camera takes it up, you know what is the next step that you are required to do. So the CCTV cameras are always a means of having that advantage over the intruder.
And of course, there are other issues where CCTV cameras are not cheap, right? And I know the government would have had a certain incentives in terms of VAT, customs duty exemptions for importing now CCTV cameras, DVR, etc. So that's an incentive in terms of if you import rather than purchase it from locally, you import it, you can pay a lesser price on it. But of course, it doesn't negate the fact that it still requires someone with some form of financial stability to really
Most certainly.
afford it.
Most certainly. And obviously, if you can't afford the CCTV camera, then obviously you would have to put other measures in place. For example, reinforcing your doors with more solid core doors. That is the perimeter of your home, burglar-proofing your windows, or probably tinting your windows can act as a deterrent so no one can see inside of your home from the public roads. Installation of other sort of security features such as garage doors so that you do not alert persons to whether or not you are home, right? Your vehicles are secured and concealed. These are initiatives that can be implemented to create that first level of security towards the external aspect of your home. And before we move on, I would like to mention something. The garbage that we dispose, the trash that we dispose, we must be conscious of it, because especially around Christmas time, we might get the PS5 for Christmas, the new MacBook Pro, or a new television, and so excited and taking it out of the box, so just take the box and throw it by the garbage for collection.
You see that a lot.
Exactly.
You know what persons purchase.
Exactly. And these perpetrators, they know what is a MacBook Pro and a PS5 as well.
You see these big 75-inch TVs and whatever they give
Exactly.
the boxes.
Exactly. So it is advisable to properly dispose of these electronic boxes by tearing it up and placing them in concealed garbage bags for collection. And that in itself can be a deterrent. You know,
that is a very, very important
tip
that I myself did not even think about, because obviously you're trying to save. One, you're trying to save the environment. Two, certain stuff that you purchase. I mean, it's difficult to put in a garbage bag unless you literally destroy not the plastic, but the cardboard, the packaging.
Box. Yes,
packaging. Wow, I had a brain freeze.
Yeah.
Right? To ensure that it is concealed in a garbage bag.
Yes.
You know?
Most certainly. So those things we can implement towards putting an additional layer of security, and it's from a commonsensical and a practical point of view. Not everyone would have the means or the resources. However, by just making that observation from the outer part of your home and making these changes to prepare yourself, I think can make a difference. Now, having considered the exterior aspect of your home, we can look at the interior aspect of your home. And one of the more proactive solutions, and I would have discussed it with my residents group at home, is that we can dedicate a safe space in your home. This may be a room, a vacant room, where there are no windows leading to the external aspect of your home, and there is only one door, so that the place is properly sealed. And in that safe room area, you have a spare telephone to contact the police if need be, or also you can have a first aid kit, and probably if it is you are a licensed firearm holder, you can be able to know your strategic points in your safe room as to engage a perpetrator if it is he was to enter your home and now he is about to proceed to breach that safety area there. In addition to implementing a safe area in your home, right, you can also designate responsibilities for members of your household. So if it is you are living with an extended family, you can assign them roles and responsibility in the event that an intruder may enter into your home and is now about to perform some sort of criminal act against you or your family. So one householder might be responsible for keeping a lookout, maybe on the camera system, the DVR system. Others might be relating to the police or communicating in the WhatsApp group, a description of the person, as well as the whereabouts of the person, where it is he is in your home or in the near vicinity. And these different roles are important because it now calms the situation and it puts you as the householder in control in your property, as opposed to not having a plan and putting everyone in that form of panic mode and anxiety. So when it is we are talking about the interior aspects of our home, it is advisable that we create that safe space area and we designate roles and responsibilities for members of our household.
Yes, and it's important, that panic room, as you said, because you know, you see that a lot in movies, or a lot of presidential movies, or persons who are very well equipped, right? But that is something that should be considered, particularly when it comes to safety exits as well, like emergency exits, because a lot of persons, they live in, some places live in townhouses, etc. And you know, when you think about it in terms of, if for instance there's a home invasion or there's a fire, and you are upstairs your property, you are trapped, basically.
Exactly. Yes, that is true.
Right? So in terms of how can we now like prevent such occurrence of, or how can we now have certain instances where we can now escape from the upper level of your homes?
Most certainly, and these are where the circumstances would present itself. And in this instance, obviously, you have to make that. You have to be able to make that analogy and assessment on your own. If it is, you know that if it is you are upstairs and the only place of escape is through a window, you don't want to cause any injury to yourself or your person. So it is advisable that you probably establish another means of emergency exit in these sort of circumstances.
Certainly, and let's get into the issue of course, I know there's also a legal aspect of it, but just before that, you mentioned safe rooms, you mentioned external CCTV cameras. What about in terms of like community? How can the community get involved in terms of being, whether it is a watchdog, what can they do to secure the community?
Yes.
Excluding, I mean, yes, you have gated communities as well, right, which is more secure, but what about communities that are non-gated?
Right. So I am sure that everyone would be familiar with the community groups, the WhatsApp chat. Most communities would have created it and it would have worked effectively. And in terms of reiterating what is expected, it is very important that if it is you are implementing these security measures for your home and you are living in a community with other neighbors, the information can be shared, because you, as well as you would like to protect yourself, it is good enough to protect other neighbors as well. So it is advisable that you have those regular meetings with your community, be able to identify your neighbors, be able to have that meet and greet, and be able to know each other's strong points and weaknesses. I'm sure there would be police officers, servicemen, and even skilled persons in your community as well, where it is you all can develop those strategies. You can also look at the locality, as I said. Is it that you are living in a community which has more than one access route via motor vehicle and pedestrian walkway? Is it that your community bounds an open space or a forested area and there are tracks leading to and from there, where just persons can easily get into your community and then disappear into the forested area? Implement plans to seal those accessways and create only one common accessway in and out. Be familiar with your neighbor's motor vehicle, make, model, description, and these sorts of things, so that you are able to know exactly when it is a suspicious vehicle is driving in your community. Remember, these are public roads.
Yes.
Some of them are public roads, those
Yes.
communities which are not gated, and there may be suspicious persons just looking around. Just like how the police patrol, there is patrol as well to look for opportunities, and be able to identify suspicious persons in certain areas of your community. So if it is you have places which are not really too lit, you can invest, come up together with the finances and place lights or street lights. They are the solar system lights that some communities would have invested in, and so on. It is also, and we have seen it, community neighbors would have invested in the air horn. So each residence would have their air horn, and they would adopt a standard operating procedure as to when it is to engage the air horn. So my community would have adopted those procedures, and it is basically, once it is you see a suspicious vehicle or you see a suspicious person and you believe that it is an imminent threat to your home or a neighbor's home, you place the air horn away from your ears, obviously, and you sound it. It's very loud, and in the still of night, you can hear it from miles away. So,
and what is the activation measure in terms of, okay, air horn is now released? Is it that, go to a WhatsApp group, or is it that who are the first responders in that particular area?
So most certainly the communication after the use of deploying of the air horn is very important. And you have the WhatsApp group, so you communicate on the WhatsApp group. If it's a suspicious person in a neighbor's property, we will be able to communicate certain aspects of that. So I can share that with you when it is.
Sure. Certainly. We'll be right back. Let's take a break. You're watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Site, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
It is estimated that 1 in 5 children have untreated cavities, which sometimes can be more than just a dental issue.
So the thinking a lot of parents have is, so that first set of teeth that the kids have, they're going to lose it anyway.
Actually, that is the attitude, but what parents need to realize is that we have those baby teeth from age 6 to age 12, and they serve a purpose.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
Jazz and Heritage Festival. Safe and sound, that's how we'll get you to the biggest North Coast Jazz ever. No hassle and no worries. Park your ride at the Queen's Park Savannah. Hop on board a safe and secure shuttle with your $100 return fee, and that's it. Service begins at 10 a.m. through 1 p.m. and returns from festival grounds from 7 p.m. Park and ride, a $100 return fee, first come, first go shuttle service to festival grounds Blashy shares. No hassle and no worries. North Coast Jazz, May 27th. Born here, played here. Tickets available at Crosby's, Extra Foods Endeavour, Shogunas Main Road, Sangre Grande, Arima, Grand Bazaar, Mart's Liquor Mart, Diego Martin, Kenny's Sports Outlets, Athletes by the Park, and WESN.
And we are back on Strictly Legal with Mr. Kelvin Siharak, attorney at law and former police officer, speaking about community and residential tips and how it applies to, of course, keeping yourself safe in the ambit of the law. Now, we will be taking some call-ins, of course, if you are viewing, and our numbers are 628-4578 or 623-9376. Just to get a bit of your review or your thoughts in terms of how can communities assist themselves and individuals in protection. Of course, any questions to the guests. Now, Calvin, you mentioned in terms of the previously that community horn, that sound horn as you call it. But then there was another area that you wanted to make known.
Yes, so the discussion with regards to the standing operating procedures and the use of the air horn. So let's say we see a suspicious person or a suspicious vehicle in our community or in front of our residential homes, and we sound the air horn. What do we do next? So we can communicate in our WhatsApp group a description of the person that you are seeing, the suspicious person, his description of the clothing he is wearing, if he's medium built, in the vicinity of whose home we are seeing him, and as a result of this now, we can now trigger a reaction in terms of getting all the other neighbors to put their observation on this suspicious activity, and we can now begin to call the relevant authorities such as the police and relay the information to them. And relaying the information to the police is very critical as to how it is the police will respond to this particular threat. So it is very important that when it is you call the emergency services, you obviously speak clear and you be precise as to what information you are giving. So you can inform them of your name, you can inform the police that you live at so-and-so address, you have a community group in place, a WhatsApp group, you have now sounded your air horn, and the police are well aware of these things within the community. So they would know once it is an air horn would have been sounded, what is your reaction? The emergency response obviously will be quicker. You relay a description of the individual or the vehicle number, make, model, and so on, color to the police. So now that can prompt their response. Communicating the information to the police is critical towards the police assisting members of the public and being able to catch these perpetrators.
And that is where it's important. Everyone is on the same page, and it just not only stop with alerting the community, but there has to be different cause and effect. So once that happens, then another chain of command is activated, another is activated until you get some form of results.
Most certainly.
Right? And of course, it's all well and good. You have your community secure, your property secured, etc. Now, when it comes to when it comes to capturing that perpetrator now, in terms of a citizen's arrest, right? Just provide us with the Trinidad and Tobago laws relating to whether or not a citizen arrest is indeed legal.
Right. So, Ronald, we are speaking about the law governing self-defense now, and this is in the context of self-defense for householders. Now, self-defense is regulated by the common law in Trinidad and Tobago, as opposed to the UK, where it is codified in statute, as well as the United States of America. We have a well-established common law precedent for self-defense as it pertains to householders. And we know that self-defense is a complete defense, meaning that if it is someone was to act in self-defense, they will be completely exonerated from whatever actions that they would have caused. Let's say someone would have reacted and in defense of their self and their property against an intruder who is armed with a firearm and advancing towards them, and you being a licensed firearm, draw for your firearm and neutralize the intruder, he dies, then that aspect of things, it makes it a complete defense in terms of the doctrine of self-defense. However, in analyzing that, we must first look at the definition of self-defense. And one of the common law definitions of self-defense is that we can look at it from the perspective of an individual, or we can put it in the context of a householder who is attacked or believed that he is about to be attacked, may use as such force as is, one, necessary and reasonable in the circumstances to defend himself. And in analyzing this, Ronald, we would look at the various criteria that may be considered for those two trigger words, necessary and reasonable. And the factors that we have to consider are, one, the first limb of self-defense is whether or not the force used by the particular householder was reasonable in the circumstances, which is something that the householder genuinely believe in the circumstances that he was to react by using force. This is something in law called a subjective test, which means that it is what the householder in his mind will be thinking before he makes that calculated decision to engage an intruder. The second limb of the defense is whether or not the particular degree of force was reasonable in the circumstances and the householder believes it to be so reasonable. This is partly objective and partly subjective. It is objective in the sense that what would a lay person, or as we say, a reasonable person in the same circumstances presented with the same situation as the householder, react or do in the present situation. Yes. And it is also subjective in terms of the householder must believe that the degree of force that he is using is enough to neutralize the particular threat that is before him. Now, with that distinction being drawn with the first and second limb of self-defense, there is also the aspect of the degree of force being proportionate. And we must now consider this in terms of whether or not the defense will be able to be applicable to you in certain scenarios. Now, there is a distinction, and I can put it on a spectrum test. We have grossly disproportionate, disproportionate, and then proportionate. Yes. In terms of the use of force. And
that's the next question in terms of what is, of course, what is proportionate versus disproportionate.
Exactly. So basically, the law of self-defense is saying that if it is the use of force is grossly disproportionate, then the individual may not be able to rely on the defense.
And can we, of course, give certain scenarios, examples?
Yes, please. So let's say, for example, and in the context of a householder, you are the owner of a licensed firearm, and you are at home 10:30 in the night, sitting in your sofa looking at television, and an intruder was to gain access into your home. And he is so quiet, he makes his way up the stairs, opens one of your bedroom doors, steals jewelry, coming down back, he saw the keys to your car, take up the car keys. Now, whilst walking out of your home, he stumbles on a chair, and this alerts you. You quickly raise up from your sofa, and you see him running out of your home, and he is now jumping your wall. Now, whilst he is jumping your wall, you draw for your firearm and you shoot him, and he falls to the ground, and upon being medically examined, he is dead. So in this circumstance, we look at whether or not the force used was necessary and reasonable in the circumstances, and if so, was it disproportionate, grossly disproportionate, or the force that you use to defend yourself and your family was proportionate in the circumstances. And if it is this situation presents itself and you are seeing, yes, he is an intruder, or he would have stolen from you, but he is now making an escape, you would have now activated deadly force. And in activating deadly force, you must have that decision being made in your mind that you are being greeted with deadly force. And if it is you in your mind thought to yourself that you are being greeted with deadly force, then you will be justified by drawing your firearm.
But in this circumstance, there was no use of, deadly force, or in these circumstances, the intruder was already exiting.
Exactly. So this is what it is the law calls over the top, and which is prima facie grossly disproportionate, this type of force. However, let's look at another scenario. Let's say the intruder enters his home armed with a firearm or cutlass. Again, you are a licensed firearm, and he is advancing towards you or a member of your family. You draw for your firearm, and you shoot him, and he dies. In this circumstance now, we look at the degree of force used, and is it proportionate in the circumstances? And this is where it is the decision would need to be made, obviously, by the prosecution aspect of things when looking at the facts and the circumstances, whether or not the householder will be liable for the death of the intruder. And if it is you are faced with a deadly force, then you will, in essence, be justified by returning deadly force in the protection of your home and your family. Right? Now, there is an interesting case, the case of Collins and the Secretary of State for Justice. And I was having a read of this case yesterday, and I would like to discuss it with you. In this case, what happened was that an intruder had entered the home of individual and proceeded to steal from him. And whilst it is he was exiting the home, the one member of the household saw him escaping and ran up behind him, held him in a headlock and subdued him on the ground. The individual wife called the police, and the estimated time of arrival for the police was 10 minutes. But during that time, that 10-minute window, the householder had the intruder in a headlock on the ground for 10 minutes. And there was a struggle between the householder and the intruder. And the intruder was telling the householder, if it is I escape here, I will kill you and your family. So the householder kept the intruder in the headlock until the police arrived. When the police arrived, the intruder was unconscious. He was taken to hospital, and upon being medically examined, he was declared partially brain dead. Now, there is the issue as to whether or not the householder would have acted in self-defense in these circumstances. And this is where the analogy comes in, in terms of whether or not he genuinely believed that it was necessary in these circumstances to use force to defend himself, and secondly, whether or not the degree of force used was reasonable in these circumstances. Remember, if it is, the degree of force is grossly disproportionate, then the defense of self-defense is not available. However, the defense of self-defense may be available in these circumstances, even though it is disproportionate. Once it is, it was reasonable. So, if it is, although there was a headlock on this intruder for 10 minutes, but the circumstances was that the intruder was saying, if it is you let me go here, I would kill you. I would kill you and your family. Now, those circumstances could give rise to you continuing to subdue the individual by whatever means necessary in the circumstances. And this is where it is a decision would have to be made based on the proportionality aspect of the defense of self-defense to determine whether or not the force, even though disproportionate because the intruder suffered brain damage, was enough to exonerate him from being liable for any sort of personal injury or criminal liability.
Indeed. Don't forget you can call us 628-4578 or 623-9376, just in the event that you need to ask a question, make a comment. But in terms of Calvin, in terms of that case, what was the result?
So basically it was an assessment as to whether or not the European Conventions on Human Rights, Article 5, which guarantees the right to life, is compatible with the statute for householders to use force in these circumstances. So most certainly the householder would have been guaranteed the self-defense, would have been guaranteed the doctrine of self-defense for his actions.
Sorry. So therefore, in terms of someone who, as you said, would have used a weapon, and now they're using their person, meaning their bodies.
Their hands, yes. Right,
their hands, or whether it is their feet or whatever the case is. It really does not matter whether it's a weapon or not, right?
Exactly.
So in this case, they would have put them in a head hold or a headlock.
Yes.
Obviously, that would have stopped circulation in their breathing.
Right.
But then you also have to look at the circumstances in terms of, okay, the perpetrator threatening you and your family while being subdued. right? And obviously that is something that by virtue of evidence, that is where you can state that, okay, you had to use that force reasonably because of the fact that had you not used it and had he gotten away, then there would have been adverse consequences later on.
Yes, and this is where it is the analogy will be made where the defense may or may not be available to someone, right, even if it is the force was disproportionate. So it may be available, right, even though your use of force was disproportionate, but it must be considered with regards to the circumstances that presented itself. So in this instance, the intruder was on the ground and he was making threats to kill the members of the family. So it is very important that these things are analyzed before finding liability for householders.
Right, indeed. We have a call from Leo Martin. Good morning.
Good morning. Very interesting show. I see your guest has been making references to individuals who are subjected to break-ins in their homes.
Yes.
Who have firearms. Now, if somebody does not have a firearm, obviously you become extremely agitated. And you allow the person to do what he has to do. What happens in the instance where you are aware of some of what has been going on? The climate of crime in the country as it stands right now will drive your rage to an extent that as the person is leaving, you seize an opportunity and you pursue him behind his back and hit him with some object that results in major injury or even being fatal. What happens in that instance?
And that's a very good question because, of course, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, caller. So what the caller is speaking of is obviously something instinctive. And the law of self-defense also makes provisions for those citizens who would have reacted via instinct. Now, he is speaking of a scenario where it is he chases the intruder, hit him with something behind his back, and he falls. This is again where it is we have to assess whether or not the force used was proportionate or disproportionate. And as I said, how it is it would be assessed is based on the subjective and the objective elements or limbs of the self-defense.
But he did mention something very interesting. You are not in a possession of a firearm, but you are agitated. So you're agitated. You know that there's a level of crime in the country, a level of crime in the community, and it happens to be you.
Yes.
Therefore, the subjective test. Okay, what is a reasonable force in circumstance?
Exactly. So you must.
Particularly, particularly if this is not your first home invasion, but your second.
Exactly. So you must definitely make that assessment in your mind as to whether or not you genuinely believe that you have to engage this individual to defend yourself.
That's a quick assessment, though.
Exactly.
In this situation.
Correct. And secondly, what it is you are going to do to defend yourself. So now, remember, when it is we are talking about self-defense, you also have the duty to retreat, right? And if it is a threat is not present to you, remember, the defense states if it is you are attacked or believe that you are about to be attacked, then this is where it is the subjective and objective and the proportionality aspect comes into play. Now, if it is you are not attacked and you do not believe that you are about to be attacked, then it is very difficult to see how it is that you may be afforded that self-defense.
And of course, there are consequences in terms of if something does happen to the perpetrator, then you being the victim, of course, there can be sanctions, right? In terms of whether it is by virtue of fines or custodial sentences, etc. So all those things are. I mean, it's sometimes for the layman it could be a bit unfair, but of course we have to work within the ambits of the law
Most certainly.
Most certainly. Kelvin, any closing comments in terms that we are out of time, unfortunately?
Again, Ronald, I would like to thank you for the opportunity for us to have this discussion, because it is a real issue and it is a constant issue in the minds of our fellow citizens. And once it is, we have that chance to continue to reiterate safety tips and to continue to encourage members of the community to come together towards creating certain operating procedures where they can have the proactive advantage against intruders. I think that we can take the first step towards making sure that our communities are safe and reassuring ourselves in our minds that we are still comfortable in our homes. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I believe I would want to publicly invite you back, right, to continue the discussion, particularly when it comes to real-life situations and dealing with real-life scenarios, so that the public can be sensitive in real time as to, okay, instances where these things may have happened and how can you react, just like how the caller from Diego Martin would have mentioned. So I will invite you back, of course, subject to your availability and your consent.
Most certainly.
And we want to thank you. And of course, it's important to be safe, keep safe. If you know something, say something. Of course, contact the TTPS if you're in a neighborhood watch group. Ensure that you be vigilant, secure your homes, secure your interior of your homes, and just keep the society safe. Thank you so much, Kelvin Siharak, attorney at law. You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. To view us once again, don't forget our podcast. Be safe. God bless. Have a good day.
WESN.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. THA Chief Secretary stands by statements for central government to stay out of Tobago